name, and then I had to look it up because I was like, who the fuck is Yiannopoulos? No, legit, autocorrect, like, took the, like, started putting it in all of my texts, and I was like, get out of here.
Funny.
Wait, so who is this guy? How did
Who's
he
Milo Yiannopoulos?
That's so funny. Okay, so he's this conservative, like, firebrand. He's like Tommy Lehman, kind of, where, like, they'll just say, like, offensive things to get, like, views and to get, like, headlines.
Okay.
And I think I'm hoping that that's kind of, like, dying out because they've reached the line. I mean, both of them have lost their jobs, whatever, because they went too far and said something that was, you know, a bridge too far. But, like, they built careers based on, like, offending people and saying things that, you know, had literally no center, no purpose, no meaning other than this is offensive, so now people are talking about me. I mean, just as an example, like, Milo Yiannopoulos, he called himself a dangerous faggot. It was like, he was, like, gay, and so he would call himself a dangerous faggot. And, like, he would talk about, like, trans people. He would say they're mentally ill. He would say stuff like, you know, they're not part of the gay community and blah, blah, blah. All this, like, really offensive stuff. And, like, you wonder, like, what's your purpose? What are you trying to say? And, like, finally they would get to the bridge too far and they reached a line. And it was a sort of, like, shock thing where, like, okay, your whole career is based on shocking people, and now people aren't shocked. They're just sick of you. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that, like, we're moving past that. I don't know. Like, I really was encouraged when I read that quote from Jerry Seinfeld where he was like, you know, I want people to have more substance. I want to see the best of the best on TV. I don't know.
I think you know, it's like, especially with the comedians that I've met here, at least the ones that talk to me. Context is important. Context is important. Because I remember when I first started, I had one joke that I was trying to do, and it was just talking about differences between red South Carolina and blue Austin. And, I mean, it was sort of just talking about some of the racist stuff that I didn't even know was racist until I got here. And I remember Nathan Ehrman sitting me down after, and just I was like, I felt like the audience was weird. And he was like, okay, so what's the joke? And he actually sat there and talked to me about it and, like, helped me reword it and even gave me a better like button and punchline to it. That was actually
nice.
Well, it was one of those things where he gave the punchline he gave me had the word faggot in it, and I was like, what? I was like, I didn't get anywhere near that kind of verbiage up there, and I feel like everybody was uncomfortable. And he was like, if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but I'm telling you, like, this is I think this is how this will work. And the first time I did it, I mean, I was scared too for a few mics, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna go for it. Killed. And it was just one of those things.
You need a third beat. People are afraid of the third beat. No, I teach this shit, Teresa. One of the jobs I have is that I teach the comedy. I teach improv and I teach sketch. And one of the things I'm always saying is, quit living in the real world. Get to the third beat. Yeah. If everyone's not dead by the end, what's the point? If everything isn't exploded in your face, what's the point of this joke? Like, if you're like leading up the ramp of offensiveness, if the last thing you say isn't the most offensive thing, then, you know, you haven't gotten it.
And it was also about, like, making sure that I ramped up the absurdity of the premise as I move forward, too, because, like, the punchline of it was, back in South Carolina, people call avocados faggot grenades. That was the punchline. And it's such a dumb thing that doesn't make sense. That's the thing, is, like, I got to... Oh, yeah, there's a lot more building up to it, but he was just, like, he just threw that out, and I was just, like... And I tried it, and by the time I got there, because the first couple of examples are real, that is such a... That's so not real that everybody was on board. You know, it was just like one of those things. Like, he also taught me to say, like, they instead of we. You know, things like that. You know? Like, when I was like, this is South Carolina, we did this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Back when we were burning crosses.
Like, he really helped me along with, like, verbiage and formula. And I feel like... you know, if you go up and you keep going and somebody doesn't come to you and try and help you, then maybe stand-up's not your thing.
Maybe you're just a dick.
Like the thing
Nathan
is like,
Ehrman, education leader of the new movement.
Nathan
If you take
Ehrman-
classes, Nathan will help you be funny.
Nathan Ehrman came to me like Rob Gagnon always had notes for me. That's one of those things. Like, as long as somebody comes up and like cares about you doing it again, I think that's all. And there will always be at least one person. Nobody's ever just going to be like pull you off with a vaudeville cane and like tar and feather you in the lobby. You know?
The only person pulling you off with a vaudeville cane is you, Patrick, because you're the one who made the vaudeville cane.
I made the vaudeville cane. I don't know why I made it.
Cane. You created it for a joke where we yanked you off stage. I'm telling you, this was your idea.
It's true. It's a true fact.
And if anybody's offended by the punchline of that joke, Nathan Ehrman, you can point all your emails to Nathan Ehrman. No, I'm just kidding.
I like that people are going to send emails to yesbutwhypodcast@gmail.com to tell us how they feel about that particular joke that you told.
Yeah.
Even though it's in the context of a discussion about offensive jokes.
Yeah. It's gonna be it's gonna be my mom's comment on this podcast. And then for the first time ever, probably 3 people like, "Hey, man." But yeah, no, and that was the other thing too. The reason I went with that is just because I was
Long-time listener, first-time commenter, Wendell, you've gone too far.
Yeah,
too much.
Yeah.
In episode 3, you talked heavily about pedophilia, but this time it's too far.
I was with you with the Bill Cosby dying thing. No, the best part about that was it was so off-brand for Nathan too, because that's not what he does.
Right.
And he was trying to meet me where I was, because I when I was starting off, I was pretty blue. I don't know. It was one of those things like I had to learn. I had to learn exactly what you were just talking about, Teresa, where it's like shock value, fun, not substantial, you know. And it was like when I first started, it was just like these rednecks are ignorant. It's crazy, and it's like Hunger Games over there. It's like North Korea. And, you know, because there are hard differences in perspectives there. But as I've grown past that and everything and workshopped a lot of things, it's like, one, that comes off a little hacky. I'm like, we did things back here. It's almost Larry the Cable Guy-esque. And also, it's just like, it's like, what am I accomplishing by just being like, everything sucks in this one part of the country, you know? Like, you know, it's like, we're still in the South. Nobody is shocked by that revelation. You know, it's like the beginning of the Confederacy.
Need to find your voice within the world that is expressing the difference between South Carolina and where you are right now. Like, everybody needs to find their own comedic voice, and like you're saying, Nathan doesn't usually do that. That's because Nathan's voice is one very specific thing. You look at him, he gives you a vibe, he fills in his comedy within that vibe. He's playing
He's
the
on
part.
brand always.
Yeah, because he's worked on that brand for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, he developed a style of looking, he developed a style of talking,
I hope he
of
listens to
presenting
this.
himself. It's important to
He's gonna blush
put that
to death.
effort.
He's gonna hear this and his head's gonna pop off. You know?
If Nathan makes it this far into this podcast, bless his goddamn heart.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is, you can find a way to make your comedy, the stand-up that you do, because stand-up is just about letting the audience in on who you are personally. You know what I mean? Like, that's actually why I had a hard time with it, because I don't want you to know what I'm like. Like that. It's lucky that I do this podcast, but mostly, like, I do sketch so I can hide behind characters and I can put my political ideals into crazy puppets' mouths, and then you're like, that's hilarious that someone would think that, and I'm like, that's really what I think. And, you know, but other people are like, check me out, this is what I'm like. So I don't know, I think maybe you just need to find other things that you stand for, that like is truly Wendell.
Well, I mean,
that
the thing
accompanies the South Carolina, can you believe it?
And honestly, I evolved way past that. It was one of those things like I stopped talking about South Carolina almost entirely because Robert Segovia came up to me. He was just like, "Hey, just stop." I love that. I love that.
That was your note.
The thing is like,
It's like, I wrote a joke about cheese, but you can't talk about the state of South Carolina.
Well, no, he was like, stop, and I was like, okay, and then he was like, I'm sorry, because we'd been drinking. He's like, here's why you should stop. Like, but he just opened up. He's like, yeah, just cut it out. And I was just like, okay. And then he just talked to me about how, like, it's just, there's so many things that just that don't matter about those kind of jokes, that it's just like, he's like, just talk about your day-to-day life here, and just, like, more observations. You can build to something else. But, I mean, yeah, like, after he told me that, and I love hard notes, so I was just like, okay, so I literally just threw all of my South Carolina shit out and just started working on new stuff. And it was more just, like, just how Austin affected me, and, like, how I viewed Austin coming from a different place. But, I mean, same time, assholes still do open mics all the time. There are comedians in Austin that are offensive, that are gross and schlocky, that are at all the open mics all the time.
I'm sure Teresa sees a bunch of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty socialist setup. You just kind of, I mean, there's so many open mics that you could run like 3 years before you're blacklisted from all of them, I think.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Teresa, how as far as we're talking about, like, finding your voice for Wendell, like, how have you enjoyed your journey of finding your voice? Like, what's led you to doing this kinds of jokes that you have? And
what's different now as from when you started too?
Yeah,
like that kind of thing.
Oh, totally different. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the jokes that you start out with when you're first, giving it a go, I mean, you look at it later on, you're like, what the fuck?
God.
I disowned this. I can't believe this came out of me. Because, I mean, you really don't know. I mean, it's just like a shot in the dark. You're just trying to fucking throw everything at the wall, and hopefully you see what sticks. And, I mean, when I first started, like, I didn't really want to talk about my family because, I mean, I totally had the same thing. Like, I just couldn't get there yet. Because I had kind of a fucked up childhood. Mm-hmm. And, like, I was like, there's so many interesting things that happened, and, like, were so worth jokes. And, like, I mean, I just couldn't talk about it yet. I had to have some distance from it. Because, I mean, I moved from Missouri to New York, and, I've been here, like, 4 years, and just, like, recently I've been able to talk about, like, my childhood, because I've had some distance from it. And, I mean, I've met a lot of people who have the same thing, where it's like, okay, I can finally, the wounds are healed, I can laugh at it. And, so, I mean, the stuff that I first started talking about was, like, literally nothing. I mean, stuff that didn't even matter to me, meaningless stuff, like funny little observations that were pointless, funny, but, like, at the end of the day, meant nothing. And so, I mean, it was nice in the sense of, like, getting comfort on stage and kind of, like, understanding the process and, like, community and blah, blah, blah. But finally, I got to the point where, like, okay, I'm going to start talking about, my family. I'm going to start talking about what I really believe, who I am as a person. Because, Amy, I mean, I couldn't agree with you. I mean, it's just you on that stage doing stand-up. And, like, at the end of the day, if they don't laugh, it's because you didn't make them laugh. And, like, when you're talking about yourself and they don't laugh, you think, oh, they don't like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a personal fucking thing. Mm-hmm. So I finally got to the point where, like, I could talk about myself. And I remember the first joke, I would try all sorts of different stuff, and I remember the first joke that actually worked every time I said it. And, I mean, it felt so great. It felt so great to have a joke that, like, the kicker worked every time. And the joke was, my parents, I grew up very religious. My parents raised me very religious. They're the kind of Christians who believe homosexuality is a sin. And I was a huge tomboy growing up, so my dad was terrified that I would grow up to be a lesbian, which is why whenever I'm having anal sex with my boyfriend, I always think, I wish Dad could see me now.
Awesome.
And, like, it kills it every time I saw it. And, like, I finally was like, wow, this fucking works. Why does it work? I dissected it, and I kind of, like, applied that to the rest of my material. And, it's grown into, like, like 20 minutes of, like, good stuff. And it feels good to say, and I connect with it. And it's such a more enjoyable process when I'm on stage. And, like, I would come alive so much more when I was just, like, talking about why do people have hot nannies? I mean, which is, like, it's funny, but, like, it didn't really mean something. And it's, like, one of the reasons why I didn't want to do, become a prosecutor, one of the reasons why I didn't want to do whatever all the other stuff that I was pursuing, like real estate, blah, 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 all this other stuff was because it didn't mean anything to me. And I was doing comedy, but I was talking about things that didn't mean anything to me. And finally, it got to the point where I was talking about me, and I was talking about me from a